What's up, guys? This is Heiss, and today we're out at the Colorado Railroad Museum inside the shop, inside stall 4, because we've got a really neat thing to talk about with this passenger car that's behind me. The car behind me is Colorado Midland 111. That's a standard gauge passenger car built in 1887, and as our team of woodworkers and restoration specialists, if you will, have been going through it, they found some really cool things that I wanted to share with you guys because it made a really cool story. Let's go take a look. And I do want to note that I'm not a woodworker. This is none of my work. That this is all from the folks at the museum like Dusty and Jeff and our wonderful woodworking team who've been doing all of this great stuff on this car. It's really exciting to see it come together. We're actually just about to start putting the siding back on the car, and I wanted to make sure I filmed this before that because we couldn't without it. Right here you can see the first couple pieces of siding that have actually gone on the car. The car has been de-sided, getting a ton of different repair over the last year and a half, particularly out here at this end platform, where the car being exposed in the elements over the years has definitely needed some attention as the moisture and the sun worked on things. So tons of fresh woods going in here on the end of this thing. You can see that without the siding on it, the side of a wooden passenger car like this almost looks like a bridge, because it essentially is. It's got to hold itself together, and then the truss rod down below is what actually tightens things back up and holds the car straight. The siding is made of tongue and groove type wood, and this is specifically mahogany on this car, which is ridiculous. Might be odd that the siding has started in the middle here. And this is what I'm specifically meaning when I'm talking about the neat thing that Dusty in particular had found out about this car. Typically you'd side the car from one side to the other, all tongue and groove, so each tongue goes in that corresponding groove, all the way down, one side to the next, there you go. So you don't tend to start in the middle because you use the nails to hold each board tight to the next so no water can get in. Dusty found out when this car had a bunch of work done to it a number of years ago by the railroad. We're talking probably over 100 years, 120 years ago maybe. They converted it from a open platform style coach into this closed vestibule on one end and observation platform on the other type passenger car. And when they did that, they were a little cheap with how they did it. They didn't reside the whole car, and you can tell that by taking a look at the way that the nail holes were actually driven in the car.
In the Midland, probably when they did this, they did the same thing they did there. They pulled off the siding to here.
Right.
And you've got the same thing where siding goes one way and then the other way. This siding is going this way, and on this side of this line it goes this way.
Huh.
The other side is just all straight in.
Right.
Because they took it apart and didn't have to worry about it. But yeah, this, when they put this here, you couldn't start here
right.
and get to that point, so you had to put a filler piece there and run back
right.
to this corner, where that side it was fine. And the same thing on this. Because Pullman had sided this way when they did this, they just went all the way down. And you can tell that this was replaced at some point because you've got 2 nail holes down here, 2 nail holes up here. This is replaced at some point probably when they did that.
Yeah, because it's only got one.
Nail.
Yeah.
So that's what we discovered.
That's cool. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Instead of residing the whole car, just side what you need to.
Right.
Because they moved the end wall from here in, and that made modifying that post right there, because it would have been paired window, big space, paired window, big space, but you can see that big space, big space.
Right, so they had to change it in order to do that.
This was the original post. They added this. So they came back to at least here with the siding. But like I said, it looks like they went back farther for whatever reason. But
neat.
I hadn't noticed the double big post until I was looking at pictures of this before. I'm like,
wait a second.
This is a paired window Pullman. It's supposed to be 2 windows, big post, 2 windows, big post. And I'm like, they changed that when they did that.
But that's not just the only thing that we've discovered on this car just by taking a look at what we found when things come off. And I say we, and I really, again, do mean the wonderful woodworkers we have here. Coming towards the A end of the car, here was a fun surprise from the car's modification. You'll note that we have lots of windows that are all out and getting replaced or repaired. And then we have a blanked window. Through all the years, that window right behind me has been covered over with siding. We had no idea that at some point in the car's history, there was a window there. But you peel back the siding and you start going, huh, well, why did they blank the window out? What was the change that made that happen? It's hard to say for sure if the window is blanked out by Pullman or by the railroad. There's a closet there for the Baker heater that may not have originally been there. We're not certain on that detail. But either way, it was something that we uncovered, like, oh, it had an option too. Maybe it was Pullman building a standard car with a certain number of windows, and then they blanked it because they knew the company wanted a Baker heater. Or maybe the company added the Baker heater later, and then they blanked out the window. It's one of those fun little games you can play. Though there's more to see on this vestibule end here. In a very similar fashion, we're still talking about blanked out windows. So we take a look at the end of the car, and it's okay. Well, same story. Maybe it had windows, maybe it didn't. Although there's a way that we think we can tell. And this comes down to, again, nail holes in the siding. And it's a cool thing. We were wondering back and forth going, okay, well, maybe it was a standard thing that they had end windows in this, and did they use it or did they not? Well, you can tell. So as we see, the ends have siding as well, just like the sides do. And we can see that we've got pairs of nail holes in all of these different boards, except for the board where the window was. We see we got all the pairs here. It's had 2 sets of siding on it in its life. Paired up nails, 2 sets of siding, 2 sets of siding. Wait a second, there's only 1 set of nails in that board. That could mean that the boards were replaced, but that's kind of highly unlikely, being how everything else looks and how undisturbed everything else is. Or it meant that at one point there was a window there, because though the cars had 2 sets of siding, 1 set covered the window clearly and was nailed to that frame bar, and 1 did not, because there was only the 1 set of nail holes. It's kind of neat what you can find out when you really dive into these things, isn't it? Perhaps one of the things I like most about railroad preservation is getting to dive into these kind of nerdy details. The more and more you look, the more and more you can learn about why the things were the way they were. Some of the details will bring forth new knowledge that you had no clue about when you started the process. Colorado Midland's insane, stupid standard gauge railroad that was absolutely ridiculous back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. It was abandoned right after World War I, and it was the largest railroad abandonment in history. And so we're very fortunate to have a car that was very important to that line here. But one thing that was interesting to see is when you take a look at some of the parts on the car, you realize that not all the parts are from the Midland. For example, take a look at these pedestals for the trucks. That one says CMRY stamped on it. That makes sense. What does the Santa Fe have to do with that? That's AT&SF. Midland was basically the most direct route through the Rockies on the standard gauge, and it was one of the first to do so. And so every other railroad around that was in the West had an interest in it. Everywhere west, everything's where, these are on the store, by the way, links down in the description if you want one. Other railroads in the West had interest in it. So the Santa Fe at one point owned a controlling stake. So when, hey Dad, we need a new pedestal for our passenger car, can you cast us some? Oh yeah, sure. We'll do that to keep your railroad running, because it helps our freight move too. Here's our little paint sample, what she's gonna look like when she's done. Gonna be a gorgeous car, but a long way to go. Restoration work like this takes a ton of work. It's definitely something that is a labor of love that we all love and enjoy. And typically, I don't talk about it too much on the channel because we're busy doing the work or everything else. It's hard to film and talk about these things, but when Dusty pointed out all the stuff that he and the woodworkers had found on the car, it's like, well, that's way too cool. And starting tomorrow, after filming this, we're gonna get more siding on this thing, and it's gonna be starting to button up. If I didn't film this now, I wouldn't be able to show it off. Share this fun little archaeological kind of experiment of what we've learned by taking apart the car. So it's always cool to see restoration work getting done, and it's definitely a big project. Still has a long way to go, but I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at a little bit of some of the crazy woodworking madness that's going on over here. Huge thanks to the museum, of course, for preserving railroad history, and to our woodworking and MASH teams for doing the crazy work on this car. I've done like 2 things to it, but this is really their baby, and it's going to be beautiful to see it finished down the road. There's a lot of new wood going in there. It's not a simple or easy thing to replace this and make everything match in kind. Similarly to the Midland car, we've learned something about Rio Grande Southern number 20 as well recently. And by we, again, I mean Jeff. Jeff's been doing some research and work on her headlights, and I don't mean that one. I mean this one right here. At this point, Jeff is pretty sure that this headlight is her historic headlight from the railroad. A headlight's a headlight's a headlight. They're 14-inch Pyle National headlights, so they look very similar. And for the longest time, it was always just wondered, oh, you know, they probably just grabbed a headlight, put the number boards in, and called it a day, and now it's hers. Well, there's some unique identifiers on this headlight that Jeff has found that when you compare to photos, starts to make a lot of sense. And we're specifically talking about dents. Near the end of Rio Grande Southern number 20's time on the railroad in the 1940s, if memory is serving right, she had a little bit of an oopsie. And by a little bit of an oopsie, I mean a real big oopsie. I'm trying, not her fault, as Dusty said, yes. She was double heading with RGS 40. RGS 40 rolled over and took 20 with her. The couplers held everything in tension and ripped one off, then they both rolled over, and that was actually the incident that caused the 40 to be scrapped. So we're actually very lucky that 20's still here, but she fell onto her fireman's side. The fireman's side of this headlight is quite dented up and looks like on the inside it had been hammered back to shape. And things are broken on it, specifically over here, which basically means one of 2 things. Either this is another headlight that has rolled over and fallen on the fireman's side, or this is 20's actual historic headlight that dates back to at least the mid-1940s, which is really cool to think about. So Jeff's getting it restored, and we're going to put what is rightfully 20's back on 20. And meanwhile, other things are happening over here. This is not a flat car. So yeah, that says $499. Yeah, that's not yours, is it, huh? Oh, and I suppose this is probably a good time for me to do Tenders 101, huh? So the more and more you look at the artifacts around you and the more detail you take a look at, the more you can learn the neat things, whether it's 20's headlight being of the different headlight, whether it's 491's tender being 499's, although we knew that, or of course, that Colorado Midland passenger car and the fun little modifications that it went throughout the years. We had kind of a bunch of these stories all happen at the same time at the museum, so I wanted to come in and talk about them. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit about fun, nerdy, niche railroad history today. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch y'all next time. Look, her butt is outside in front of her butt. Huh? I'm staring at her 491's butt that's outside of 491's butt.